The Sixth Book of the Odysseys of Homer. The Argument. Minerva in a vision stands Before Nausicaa, and commands She to the flood her weeds should bear, For now her nuptial day was near. Nausicaa her charge obeys, And then with other virgins plays. Their sports make wak'd Ulysses rise, Walk to them, and beseech supplies Of food and clothes. His naked sight Puts the other maids afraid to flight. Nausicaa only boldly stays, And gladly his desire obeys. He, furnish'd with her favours shown, Attends her and the rest to town. Another Argument. Zeta. Here Olive leaves To hide shame began, The maid receives the naked man. The much sustaining, patient, heav'nly man, Whom toil and sleep had worn so weak and wan, Thus won his rest. In mean space Pallas went to the Phæacian city, And descent that first did broad Hyperia's lands divide, Near the vast Cyclops, men of monstrous pride, That prey'd on those Hyperians, since they were Of greater pow'r; and therefore longer there Divine Nausinous dwelt not, but arose, And did for Scheria all his pow'rs dispose, Far from ingenious art inventing men; But there did he erect a city then. First drew a wall round, then he houses builds, And then a temple to the Gods, The fields lastly dividing. But he, stoop'd by fate, Div'd to the infernals, and Alcinous sate In his command, a man the Gods did teach Commanding counsels. His house held the reach Of grey Minerva's project, to provide That great soul'd Ithacus might be supplied With all things fitting his return. She went up to the chamber, where the fair Descent of great Alcinous slept, a maid, Whose parts in wit and beauty wore divine Deserts. Well deck'd her chamber was, of which the door Did seem to lighten, such a gloss it bore Betwixt the posts, and now flew ope to find The Goddess entry. Like a puft of wind She reach'd the virgin bed, neat which there lay Two maids, to whom the Graces did convey Figure and manners. But above the head Of bright Nausicaa did Pallas tread The subtle air, and put the person on Of Dymas' daughter, from comparison Exempt in business naval. Like his seed Minerva look'd now, whom 1 year did breed With bright Nausicaa, and who had gain'd Grace in her love, yet on her thus complain'd: "Nausicaa! Why bred thy mother one So negligent in rites so stood upon By other virgins? Thy fair garments lie Neglected by thee, yet thy nuptials nigh, Which rich in all attire both thou shouldst be, And garments give to others honouring thee, That lead thee to the temple. Thy good name Grows amongst men for these things; they inflame Father and rev'rend mother with delight. Come, when the day takes any wink from night, Let's to the river, and repurify Thy wedding garments. My society Shall freely serve thee for thy speedier aid, Because thou shalt no mote stand on the maid. Best of all Phæacia woo thy grace, Where thou wert bred, and ow'st thyself a race. Up, and stir up to thee thy honour'd sire, To give thee mules and coach, thee and thy tire, Veils, girdles, mantles, early to the flood, To bear in state. It suits thy high born blood, And far more fits thee, than to foot so far, For far from town thou know'st the bath founts are." This said, away blue eyed Minerva went Up to Olympus, the firm continent That bears in endless being the deified kind, That's neither sous'd with show'rs, nor shook with wind, Nor chill'd with snow, but where serenity Flies exempt from clouds, and ever beamy skies Circle the glitt'ring hill, and all their days Give the delights of blessed Deity praise. And hither Pallas flew, and left the maid. When she had all that might excite her said, Straight rose the lovely Morn, that did upraise Fair veil'd Nausicaa, whose dream her praise To admiration took; who no time spent To give the rapture of her vision vent To her lov'd parents, whom she found within. Her mother set a fire, who had to spin A rock, whose tincture with sea purple shin'd, Her maids about her. But she chanc'd to find Her father going abroad, to council call'd By his grave senate, and to him exhal'd Her smother'd bosom was. "Lov'd sire," said she, Will you not now command a coach for me, stately and complete, fit for me to bear to wash at flood the weeds I cannot wear before repurified? Yourself it fits to wear fair weeds, as every man that sits in place of counsel. And 5 sons you have, 2 wed, 3 bachelors, that must be brave in every day's shift, that they may go dance; for these 3 last with these things must advance their states in marriage; and who else but I, their sister, should their dancing rites supply? This general cause she show'd, and would not name Her mind of nuptials to her sire, for shame. He understood her yet, and thus replied: "Daughter, nor these, nor any grace besides, I either will deny thee, or defer, Mules, nor a coach, of state and circular, Fitting at all parts. Go, my servants shall Serves thy desires, and thy command in all." The servants then commanded soon obey'd, Fetch'd coach, and mules join'd in it. Then the maid brought from the chamber her rich weeds, And laid all up in coach; in which her mother plac'd A maund of victuals, varied well in taste, And other junkets. Wine she likewise fill'd Within a goat skin bottle, and distill'd Sweet and moist oil into a golden cruse, Both for her daughters' and her handmaids' use, To soften their bright bodies, when they rose Cleans'd from their cold baths. Up to coach then goes The observéd maid, takes both the scourge and reins, And to her side her handmaids straight attains. Nor these alone, but other virgins, grace The nuptial chariot. The whole bevy plac'd, Nausicaa scourg'd to make the coach mules run, That neighed and pac'd their usual speed; and soon Both maids and weeds brought to the river side, Where baths for all the year their use supplied; Whose waters were so pure they would not stain, But still ran fair forth, and did more remain Apt to purge stains; for that purg'd stain within, Which by the water's pure store was not seen. These here arriv'd, the mules uncoach'd, and drave Up to the gulfy river's shore, that gave Sweet grass to them. The maids from coach then took Their clothes, and steep'd them in the sable brook; Then put them into springs, and trod them clean With cleanly feet; adventuring wagers then Who should have soonest and most cleanly done. When having thoroughly cleans'd, they spread them On the flood's shore, all in order. And then, where the waves the pebbles wash'd, and ground was clear, they bath'd themselves, and all with glittering oil Smooth'd their white skins, refreshing then their toil With pleasant dinner by the river side; Yet still watch'd when the sun their clothes had dried; Till which time, having din'd, Nausicaa With other virgins did at stool ball play, Their shoulder reaching head tires laying by. Nausicaa with wrists of ivory the liking stroke struck, Singing first a song as custom order'd, And amidst the throng made such a show, And so past all was seen, as when the chaste born Arrow loving queen, along the mountains gliding, Either over Spartan Taygetus, whose tops far discover, Or Eurymanthes in the wild boar's chase, Or swift hoof'd Hart, and with her Jove's fair race, The field nymphs sporting, amongst whom to see How far Diana had priority, Though all were fair, for fairness yet of all, As both by head and forehead being more tall, Latona triumph'd, since the dullest sight Might easily judge whom her pains brought to light. Nausicaa so, whom never husband tam'd, Above them all in all the beauties flam'd. But when they now made homewards, and array'd, Ordering their weeds disorder'd as they play'd, Mules and coach ready, then Minerva thought What means to wake Ulysses might be wrought, That he might see this lovely sighted maid, Whom she intended should become his aid, Bring him to town, and his return advance. Her mean was this: though thought a stool ball chance, The queen now, for the up stroke, struck the ball Quite wide off the other maids, and made it fall Amidst the whirlpools; at which out shriek'd all, And with the shriek did wise Ulysses wake, Who, sitting up, was doubtful who should make That sudden outcry, and in mind thus striv'd: "On what a people am I now arriv'd? At civil hospitable men that fear The Gods? Or dwell injurious mortals here, unjust and churlish. Like the female cry of youth it sounds. What are they? Nymphs bred high on tops of hills, or in the founts of floods, in herby marshes, or in leafy woods? Or are they high spoke men I now am near? I'll prove and see." With this, the wary peer crept forth the thicket, and an olive bough broke with his broad hand, which he did bestow in covert of his nakedness, and then put hasty head out. Look how from his den a mountain lion looks, that, all embrued with drops of trees, and weather beaten hued, bold of his strength, goes on, and in his eye a burning furnace glows, all bent to prey on sheep or oxen, or the upland hart, his belly charging him, and he must part stakes with the herdsman in his beast's attempt. Even where from rape their strengths are most exempt. So wet, so weather beat, so stung with need, even to the home fields of the country's breed, Ulysses was to force forth his access, though merely naked, and his sight did press the eyes of soft hair'd virgins. Horrid was his rough appearance to them. The hard paths he had at sea stuck by him. All in flight the virgins scatter'd, frighted with this sight, about the prominent windings of the flood. All but Nausicaa fled, but she fast stood. Pallas had put a boldness in her breast, and in her fair limbs tender fear compress'd, and still she stood him, as resolv'd to know what man he was, or out of what should grow his strange repair to them. And here was he put to his wisdom, if her virgin knee he should be bold, but kneeling to embrace, or keep aloof, and try with words of grace, in humblest suppliance, if he might obtain some cover for his nakedness, and gain her grace to show and guide him to the town. The last he best thought, to be worth his own, in weighing both well, to keep still aloof, and give with soft words his desires their proof, lest, pressing so near as to touch her knee, he might incense her maiden modesty. This fair and filed speech then shew'd this was he: "Let me beseech, O Queen, this truth of thee. Are you of mortal, or the deified race? If of the Gods, that the ample heavens embrace, I can resemble you to none above So near as to the chaste born birth of Jove, The beamy Cynthia. Her you full present, In grace of ev'ry godlike lineament, Her goodly magnitude, and all the address You promise of her very perfectness. If sprung of humans that inhabit earth, Thrice blest are both the authors of your birth. Thrice blest your brothers, that in your deserts Must, even to rapture, bear delighted hearts, To see, so like the first trim of a tree, Your form adorn a dance. But most blest he Of all that breathe, that hath the gift t' engage Your bright neck in the yoke of marriage, And deck his house with your commanding merit. I have not seen a man of so much spirit, Nor man, nor woman, I did ever see At all parts equal to the parts in thee. T' enjoy your sight doth admiration seize My eyes, and apprehensive faculties. Lately in Delos, with a charge of men Arriv'd, that render'd me most wretched then, Now making me thus naked, I beheld The burthen of a palm, whose issues swell'd About Apollo's fane, and that put on A grace like thee, for earth had never none Of all her sylvan issue so adorn'd. Into amaze my very soul was turn'd To give it observation, as now thee to view, O virgin, a stupidity past admiration strikes me, join'd with fear to do a suppliant's due, and press so near as to embrace thy knees. Nor is it strange, for one of fresh and firmest spirit would change to embrace so bright an object, but, for me, a cruel habit of calamity prepar'd the strong impression thou hast made, for this last day did fly night's 20th shade Since I, at length, escap'd the sable seas, when in the meantime the unrelenting prease Of waves and stern storms toss'd me up and down, From the isle Ogygia. And now God hath thrown my wrack on this shore, that perhaps I may My miseries vary here, for yet their stay, I fear, Heav'n hath not order'd, though before These late afflictions it hath lent me store. O Queen, deign pity then, since first to you My fate importunes my distress to vow. No other dame nor man, that this earth own And neighbour city, I have seen or known. The town then show me, give my nakedness Some shroud to shelter it, if to these seas Linen or woollen you have brought to cleanse. God give you in requital all the amends Your heart can wish, a husband, family, And good agreement. Naught beneath the sky More sweet, more worthy is than firm consent Of man and wife in household government. It joys their wishers well, their enemies wounds, But to themselves the special good redounds. She answer'd: "Stranger, I discern in thee Nor sloth, nor folly reigns, and yet I see Th' outpoor and wretched; in which I conclude, That industry nor wisdom make endued Men with those gifts that make them best to the eye. Jove only orders felicity. To good and bad, his pleasure fashions still The whole proportion of their good and ill. And he, perhaps, hath form'd this plight in thee, Of which thou must be patient, as he free. But after all thy wand'rings, since thy way Both to our earth and near our city lay, As being expos'd to our cares to relieve, Weeds, and what else a human hand should give To one so suppliant, and tam'd with woe, Thou shalt not want. Our city I will show, And tell our people's name. This neighbour town, And all this kingdom, the Phæacians own. And since thou seem'st so fain to know my birth, And mad'st a question, if of heav'n or earth, This earth hath bred me, and my father's name Alcinous is, that in the pow'r and frame Of this isle's rule is supereminent." Thus, passing him, she to the virgins went, And said: "Give stay both to your feet and fright. Why thus disperse ye for a man's mere sight? Esteem you him a Cyclop, that long since made use To prey upon our citizens? This man no moist man is, nor waterish thing, That's ever flitting, ever ravishing All it can compass, and like it doth range In rape of women, never stay'd in change. This man is truly manly, wise, and stay'd In soul more rich, and more to sense decay'd, Who nor will do nor suffer to be done Acts lewd and abject, nor can such a one Greet the Phæacians with a mind envious. Dear to the Gods they are, and he is pious. Besides, divided from the world we are, The out part of it, billows circular The sea revolving round about our shore. Nor is there any man that enters more Than our own countryman with what is brought From other countries. This man, minding nought but his relief, A poor unhappy wretch, wrack'd here, And hath no other land to fetch. Him now we must provide for. From Jove come all strangers, and the needy of a home, Who any gift, though ne'er so small it be, Esteem as great, and take it gratefully. And therefore, virgins, give the stranger food And wine, and see ye bathe him in the flood, Near to some shore to shelter most inclin'd. To cold bath'd bathers hurtful is the wind, Not only rugged making the outward skin, But by his thin pow'rs pierceth parts within." This said, their flight in a return they set, And did Ulysses with all grace entreat, Show'd him a shore, wind proof, and full of shade, By him a shirt and utter mantle laid, A golden jug of liquid oil did add, Bad wash, and all things as Nausicaa bad. Divine Ulysses would not use their aid, But thus bespake them: "Ev'ry lovely maid, Let me entreat to stand a little by, That I, alone, the fresh flood may apply To cleanse my bosom of the sea wrought brine, And then use oil, which long time did not shine On my poor shoulders. I'll not wash in sight Of fair hair'd maidens. I should blush outright, To bathe all bare by such a virgin light." They mov'd, and mus'd a man had so much grace, And told their mistress what a man he was. He cleans'd his broad soil'd shoulders, back, and head Yet never tam'd, but now had foam and weed Knit in the fair curls; which dissolv'd, he slick'd All with sweet oil. The sweet charity The untouch'd virgin show'd in his attire He cloth'd him with. Then Pallas put a fire, more than before, Into his sparkling eyes, His late soil set off with his soon fresh guise. His locks, cleans'd, curl'd the more, and match'd in pow'r To please an eye the hyacinthian flow'r. And as a workman, that can well combine Silver and gold, and make both strive to shine, As being by Vulcan and Minerva too, taught how far either may be urg'd to go in strife of eminence, when work sets forth a worthy soul to bodies of such worth, no thought reproving the act in any place, nor art no debt to nature's liveliest grace. So Pallas wrought in him a grace as great, from head to shoulders, and ashore did seat his goodly presence. To which such a guise he show'd in going, that it ravish'd eyes, all which continued as he sat apart. Nausicaa's eyes struck wonder through her heart, who thus bespake her consorts: "Hear me, you fair wristed virgins. This rare man, I know, treads not our country earth, against the will Of some God throned on th' Olympian hill. He show'd to me, till now, not worth the note, But now he looks as he had Godhead got. I would to heav'n my husband were no worse, And would be call'd no better, but the course Of other husbands please to dwell out here, Observe, and serve him with our utmost cheer." She said, they heard and did. He drunk and eat Like to a Harpy, having touch'd no meat Along beforetime. But Nausicaa now thought of the more grace She did lately vow, had horse to chariot join'd, And up she rose, up cheer'd her guest, and said: "Guest, now dispose yourself for town, that I May let you see my father's court, where all The peers will be of our Phæacian state. At all parts then, observe to whom and what place Y' are to attain, though I need usher you With no advice, since I suppose you Absolutely wise. While we the fields pass, And men's labours there, so long in these maids' guides Directly bear upon my chariot. I must go before for cause that after comes, To which this more be my induction. You shall then soon end your way to town, whose tow'rs you see ascend to such a steepness, on whose either side a fair port stands, to which is nothing wide an enterer's passage, on whose both hands ride ships in fair harbours; which once past, you win the goodly market place, that circles in a fane to Neptune, built of curious stone, and passing ample, where munition, gables, and masts men make, and polish'd oars. For the Phæacians are not conquerors by bows nor quivers. Oars, masts, ships they are, with which they plough the sea, and wage their war. And now the cause comes why I lead the way, not taking you by coach. The men, that sway in work of those tools that so fit our state, Are rude mechanicals, that rare and late Work in the market place. And those are they whose bitter tongues I shun, who straight would say (for these vile vulgars are extremely proud and foul languag'd), what is he allow'd to coach it with Nausicaa, so large set, and fairly fashion'd? Where were these two met, he shall be sure her husband, she hath been gadding in some place, and, of foreign men fitting her fancy, kindly brought him home in her own ship. He must of force be come from some far region. We have no such man. It may be, praying hard, when her heart ran on some wish'd husband, out of heav'n some God dropp'd in her lap, and there lies she at road her complete lifetime. But in sooth, if she, ranging abroad, a husband, such as he whom now we saw, laid hand on, she was wise; for none of all our nobles are of prize enough for her. He must beyond sea come, that wins her high mind, and will have her home. Of our peers many have importun'd her, yet she will none. Thus these folks will confer behind my back, or meeting, to my face the foul mouth'd rout Dare put home this disgrace. And this would be reproaches to my fame; For even myself just anger would inflame, If any other virgin I should see, Her parents living, keep the company Of any man to any end of love, Till open nuptials should her act approve. And therefore hear me, guest, and take such way That you yourself may compass in your stay Your quick deduction by my father's grace, And means to reach the root of all your race. We shall, not far out of our way to town, A never fell'd grove find, that poplars crown, To Pallas sacred, where a fountain flows, And round about the grove a meadow grows, In which my father holds a manor house, Deck'd all with orchards green and odorous, As far from town as one may hear a shout. There stay and rest your foot pains, till full out We reach the city, where, when you may guess We are arriv'd, and enter our access within my father's court, then put you on for our Phæacian state, where to be shown my father's house desire. Each infant there can bring you to it, and yourself will clear distinguish it from others; for no shows the city buildings make compar'd with those that King Alcinous' seat doth celebrate, in whose roofs, and the court, where men of state and suitors sit and stay, when you shall hide. Straight pass it, ent'ring further, where abide my mother with her withdrawn housewiferys, who still sits in the fire shine, and applies her rock, all purple and of pompous show, her chair plac'd against a pillar, all a row her maids behind her set; and to her here my father's dining throne looks, seated where he pours his choice of wine in, like a God. This view once past, for the other end of your abode address suit to my mother, that her mien may make the day of your redition seen, and you may frolic straight, though far away you are in distance from your wished stay. For if she once be won to wish you well, your hope may instantly your passport seal, and thenceforth sure abide to see your friends, fair house, and all to which your heart contends." This said, she us'd her shining scourge, and lash'd her mules, that soon the shore left where she wash'd; and knowing well the way, their pace was fleet, and thick they gather'd up their nimble feet; which yet she temper'd so, and us'd her scourge with so much skill, as not to over urge the foot behind, and make them straggle so from close society. Firm together go Ulysses and her maids. And now the sun sunk to the waters, when they all had won the never fell'd and sound exciting wood, sacred to Pallas, where the godlike good Ulysses rested, and to Pallas pray'd: "Hear me of the goat kept Jove, the unconquer'd Maid. Now thoroughly hear me, since in all the time Of all my wrack, my pray'rs could never climb Thy far off ears, when noiseful Neptune toss'd Upon his wat'ry bristles my emboss'd And rock torn body. Hear me now, and deign I may of the Phæacian state obtain Pity and grace." Thus pray'd he, and she heard; by no means yet, exposed to sight, appear'd, for fear to offend her uncle, the supreme Of all the sea Gods, whose wrath still extreme Stood to Ulysses, and would never cease, Till with his country's shore he crown'd his peace.